There's an online buddy of mine who has made videos and also left comments expressing how he is offended both when women who have children approach him and when women who turn their noses up at him earlier on in his life are now coming back trying to get at him. And they do this now that they are overweight, got 2 kids, and are desperate to find a husband. Well, first I want to say that a lot of these scenarios that you guys come up with have a female flip side. I'll get to that in a minute. But a lot of times you'll hear guys say, oh, these women want to mess around when they're young with the bad boys and get all pregnant and stuff, and then when they're 35 and overweight and desperate for a husband, they want to come back and get us. Us meaning the men who don't have kids and are financially stable. And then they just go on and on. Oh, these women got a lot of nerve. What makes them think they deserve a man who has no kids when they've got 3? Now I hear you guys, but you're reading way too much into it. It's actually much simpler than that. But first, let me tell you the female version of that. When I went home for Christmas, I brought back my high school and college yearbooks from my mom's house, and I was bored one night, so I pulled out my yearbooks and went on Facebook and just started typing in names to see who I could find. So eventually I came across a guy who used to be in a rap group with my cousins, so that reminded me of the rap group, so I started typing in the names of all the guys who used to be in the group. Most of them I wasn't able to find, but there was one guy who I wasn't able to find, but I was friends with his brother already on Facebook, so I emailed him to ask him about his brother. So anyway, the guy wrote me back, but he didn't tell me anything about his brother. He just said, here's his Facebook page, go there and contact him there. The guy I was looking for, who we'll call Q, his Facebook profile name was something made up, had nothing to do with his real name, and there were no pictures on it, no info, no nothing. I almost decided not to send a message because I couldn't be sure who it was, but since old boy said it was okay, I went ahead and sent the message. A few hours later, I got a reply from Q saying, hey, text me at this number. I was like, okay. So anyway, I texted him and everything. I said, hey Q, what's up? What are you doing now? Something like that. Then I said something like, we haven't seen each other since we were kids. And kids meaning I was like 16 or 17 and he was 19 or 20. So then he texted me back and said, you know I wanted you, right? I was like, psh, yeah, right. Q would have boned almost any chick who would let him. Not that that makes him different from other guys his age, but that was the only sense in which he wanted me. He was not trying to be my boyfriend. But anyway, after he sent me the you know I always wanted you comment, I wrote him back and said, yeah, right. So what do you do now? So then he writes back and says, oh no, I really did like you. I remember when we used to kiss. Now mind you, I never kissed that boy. And while I do believe he knows who I am, he's remembering an experience with some other chick. It was at that point I realized, hey, this guy still hasn't told me anything about himself. So I texted him back and said, hey, where are you? He texted me back and finally tells me that he's locked up, and then in that same message he asked if I'm single. It was a little bit of a shock to my system to hear that this guy was locked up, but then at the same time I wasn't really surprised because he was getting in trouble even back then. I texted him back and told him that no, I wasn't single. I've been married for almost a year. Then I sent him another text message asking him how long he'd been locked up. I didn't ask him what he was in for because I didn't really feel it was my business. I would let him volunteer the information if he wanted me to know. He sent me 2 back-to-back messages. The first one said, 4 years, and the second one said, I still want you. I had just told him that I was married, and I know he got the message because it was in the same text where I asked him how long he had been locked up. I knew right then that this was going to be the last time I talked to Q. Obviously, he has no respect for boundaries, and further evidence of that is that he's locked up. But anyway, this situation reminded me of my online friend who had talked about being offended by women who were coming on to him now but weren't interested in him before. I too was a bit miffed and was saying things like, what makes this guy think he can get me? What makes him think I want him? He's in jail. No, excuse me, he's in prison. After a few minutes of stewing, I realized that I was taking this too personally and reading too much into it. This guy is in prison. I don't know his prison routine, but it's theoretically possible that he could have 24 hours a day to do nothing but just sit. That has to get hella boring and monotonous and routine. So then he gets a text from somebody, a female, inquiring about him. Why would he not try to say whatever he thinks I want to hear to keep me interacting with him? And I guess he figured if he tickled the right spot, he could start getting me to send him letters and care packages and text him pictures of my tits. This wasn't about me personally. This was about a guy who was in prison trying to get anything he can from whoever's willing. It doesn't make a difference. I could be fat, I could be ugly, I could have a mustache, I could be 90 years old. If I text him, he's going to try to get from me whatever I'll give him. And that's exactly why I stopped responding back to him. I sent him a message like, well, it was nice talking to you, take care, and that was it. He tried texting me for a couple of days after that, but then I guess he got the message, or maybe he'll try again in the future. But anyway, just like Q, you shouldn't take it personal or be offended that these women are trying to get with you now, and they didn't want you before. They have a need or want, and that is that they want a husband or father for their children, and you would fit that bill. But it doesn't have to be you. It could be you, him, or him. She's looking for whomever meets her requirements and is willing to take her. And she's throwing out feelers until somebody bites. You really can't blame a person for going after what they want/need. And nobody thinks like, oh, I've got 3 kids, so I don't deserve a man who's got no kids and has his money right. They're saying, no, I'm going to go for this man because that's what I want. Why would she not go for what she wants? It's just like in the other video when I talked about somebody winning the lottery and all of a sudden everybody wants to come out the woodwork. Why would they not? Oh, those are his lottery winnings. I don't have any rights to that. Whatever, let me get over there and try to get some of that. That's how people think. And even me personally, as far as I'm concerned, if I ask you for something and you give it to me, I deserve it. And that's why morality is no good to you in situations like that. You have to look at what actions benefit a person and expect them to do that. Now, I'm not talking about walking around being paranoid about every single person you meet. I'm mostly talking about situations in which a person has a lot to gain. You can leave your pens on your desk at work, and when you get back, they'll probably still be there. However, I would not suggest that you leave your $1 million on your desk. You should expect someone to take that. Situations like that, even though it's hypothetical, will turn normally honest people into thieves. The stakes just have to be high enough. The next point I want to make, which still ties into my story about Q and about the single mothers hitting on my online friend, is that when you're choosing people to form relationships with, whether it's platonic or romantic, you want to be careful about getting with people who have way more to gain by being associated with you than you have to gain by being associated with them. Also, you want to be careful about people whom you have more to lose by knowing them than to gain. For example, a college-educated guy with a good job hanging around with some gangbangers. Or me continuing to interact with Q. Any benefits to me knowing him or continuing to talk to him are far outweighed by the things that could go wrong. Well, it doesn't hurt to keep him as a friend because you never know. One day you might need a kidney and he could be the only person who could give it to you. Well, if that ever happens, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Meanwhile, get the hell out of here with that. This guy does not respect my marriage. He's a convicted felon. What do I need with that? How can that benefit me? He has way more to gain knowing me than I have to gain knowing him. The scale is so off balance that it wouldn't be wise for me to deal with him. Now, some inequalities are okay. Some are unavoidable. But either way, you should just be careful when dealing with people who don't have as much to lose